Hi, this is Stephanie. You're listening to the Healthy Practitioner Podcast, where we talk health, wellness, and all things detox. Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Healthy Practitioner Podcast. Today, I am lucky to interview Felicia Crawford. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Okay. Today we're going to talk about Theta Healing. So this was almost an impromptu podcast because you came up here from Florida to Piasta, Iowa. She was like, where is Piasta? To teach my staff and myself about the basic level of Theta Healing. And we'll dive deeper into that today about what Theta Healing is and what the benefits are to our health. But first, I want to ask you a little bit about your journey. Can you tell me, sum up the journey that got you to Theta Healing and what drove you, into this profession?
Okay. Let me figure out how to start. So Theta Healing came into my life in 2012. This was after being on the spiritual path since about the year 2000. And that was a point in my own life when I was struggling with a lot of health issues, depression, and some muscle issues, things that way. And there was no diagnosis. I was going to everyone. And during that time, I started to turn to alternative things. I started with yoga, meditation, and then I was introduced to Reiki. So I spent about 15 years really studying Reiki and working people predominantly with that practice. Theta Healing came along, and it was at a time that I was working with people, and what I was noticing is that I could help them to manage what was going on. I could help them to have more space of feeling balanced and well. But if they stopped coming, that eventually that the illness, the disease, or the challenge, whatever that is for that person, would start coming back up. So in my own prayers and meditations, I was asking, what's the missing piece? And that's where Theta Healing, someone called me and said, I think you should take this class. And I ended up taking the class, and it just transformed everything. It opened everything up because Theta Healing started looking at a broader spectrum of things, not just Reiki. Very much works with our energy. Yoga is a lot about balancing the mind and the body. But when you go into Theta Healing, it starts looking at what are called belief levels. So the beliefs are really, and a lot of people are very familiar these days with limiting beliefs and working with things such as affirmations. Theta Healing helped me to understand how important that was and how that within us in the subconscious, there were a lot of limiting beliefs. And if we didn't get to those, what would happen is that we could shift our energy, but the limiting belief would eventually begin to become the orchestrator of that energy again. So Theta Healing really came into my life in that way. And it transformed the way that I started looking at healing.
Oh, I love that. And, to jump back to where we got introduced, I was in Florida for a wedding a few months ago, and I looked up just some different practitioners because I always learning things about my body and healing on another level. And I reached out to you. You graciously accepted to work with me on a weekend. And I learned something about my body that day. And it was something, I've been on this journey since 2014 in a very spiritual, physical level. I tell people I've done most all of the things. And with this, it was like, wow, I really learned about Crohn's and how it really had its own consciousness in my body. And so, I was saying okay, what can I do to heal myself? And I was limiting myself because the Crohn's had its own consciousness that I needed to work with as well. Yes. And that was one of the biggest things that I was like, wow, I need to really start working with the way that I use my words and the belief systems that I have. So it was a true healing and pivotal point in my healing journey as well.
Yeah, I'm very thankful that we connected. It really is that when you look at someone that carries a dis-ease, an illness, sickness, that illness itself has its own consciousness. Even in my studies as a medical intuitive, you learn about all of the diseases and that each one of them has different sort of general like places, like even a Crohn's tends to have a lot of built-in programs around not being able to get rid of it. This will be here forever. Those, especially things like autoimmune. So what it'll do is start to first, in order to even have the disease, somewhere within you has to have that limiting belief as well. So they match. And this is an energy understanding of resonance. So things that vibrate together will match together in the universe. So with Theta Healing, it says what we have to do is start shifting the limiting beliefs in the individual so it no longer matches that of the disease itself. And then it is out of resonance and no longer needed. So what I find with a lot of healing is that people will just say this statement and they'll say, I just want to release what no longer serves me. And I used to say that statement. And what I came to realize with Theta Healing is if I don't know how it's serving me, it's not going to go, because everything that we have, including a sickness, a disease, would be serving us in some way. It may have been the moment that, right, got you to the path of awakening. Even my own. I would not be here today if it hadn't been for all of that, and I grew up with a lot of abuse on every level. I wrote about that in my first book, Uncommon Faith. And I talked about transformation of where I was at that point in my life and realizing that I was carrying all of those things from the past, and it was sitting in my subconscious, wreaking havoc and causing this, and it's the disease. And you really understand that as like two words. There's a dis, and if you're not at ease, that one will fit right in there. And it's starting to really look at and go, if I no longer want to match the disease, then I've got to start peeling back the layers. The problem is that many people don't know how to access their subconscious. And that's where this practice is called Theta Healing, because theta is a brainwave. And that's the brainwave that is the magic of Theta Healing, because when you're in a theta brainwave, if there was a door between your conscious and subconscious, theta brainwaves opens the door.
So with that, I know Bruce Lipton talks about like ages 0 to 7, you're in a constant theta brainwave. So you're like in a constant state of hypnosis almost. So you're very impressionable at that young age. Is that a good time for people to like, I guess, work with their children, with their consciousness, and how to, I guess it's really preventing these negative belief systems to go into their children at that time.
Yeah. And also to understand that even the best parent, that these children are going to be exposed to, right, school and peers, and so much of beliefs are the way that it is perceived. So much of, even during that time, isn't even what you say, but what you're exemplary of, even what you're vibrating in the home. So this is why it really is, just like he's saying, it's so important, those primary years. But in Theta Healing, it goes further, that it's not just 0 to 7. This is core, is from birth all the way until basically you leave home. Okay. Because at that point, you move into another stage of life where you are deciding. So beliefs as a child are different because they've been basically what you've been shown and what you've learned. Now, when you go out into the world, you get to see those showing up in your life. And that's where, at that point, you get to decide whether you're going to hold on to that or not, if you are taught that you have that power. Many times, especially even in psychology, they understand that we get to a certain point that we think that this is how I am, and then it becomes the mode of operation. Even as much as I see this with an illness and disease, that they start to identify as it. It is my anxiety. As soon as you hear somebody say, my Crohn's, my anxiety, it means that at that point, they have now become identified with it. So you and the belief systems of that disease are exactly the same. So you're in total resonance with it. And
that's, I think, what related to me as much as like, no, it has its own consciousness, whether it's Crohn's or cancer or anything like that. Like I think of it as like its own entity inside of my body, residing in my body, telling me what to do. And so it's like that point of like getting my power back and saying, I am here. I have the tools. I don't need you here. And I know when we did some work, it was like it came into my body at, when I was young 20s, because I was in a path that was unsure. I was not unsure. So it kind of course corrected me. I had to sit down with my body and figure things out. And it led to this beautiful space that I have now and that I have created. But then I'm like, okay, how can I leave that behind? And I realized as I grew, I didn't have that toxic world anymore, but I was going. And it was like, okay, well, I'm going to still stay here, because if I'm not here, then you're not going to rest and you're going to drive yourself in destruction.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, there has to be a better way for me to do things with ease without having Crohn's flares. And so that's kind of where the biggest shift in my body was. And now that I have that perspective, seeing my patients that have cancer or schizophrenia or autoimmune disease, it's like, well, why did that come into your body? What is its consciousness, and what can you do to change that belief system?
Ultimately, a great question is to ask what it's teaching you. Because as soon as you ask different questions, you engage a different part of you. Because the whole path of healing and where we come to is that we have to empower the individual. And so even if you don't know Theta Healing, let's say you're struggling with anything, the most important thing is a positive mindset. Because if you allow all that negativity to take over, beliefs are really one of the magical parts of Theta Healing. And a belief is something you've thought over and over again, right? And now has an emotional feeling to it, and it has a reason in your life. So we have there's many thoughts that go through our mind, but it's those ones that are persistent and negative that are limiting beliefs. Now, don't think that all beliefs are negative. We also have some really wonderful beliefs. I'm strong. I can do anything in the world. Mm-hmm. I'm unstoppable, right? I'm a good person. All of those are wonderful beliefs, but I see a lot of limiting beliefs. And I think it's part of, and this is one of the levels in Theta Healing, is our collective. There seems to be a lot in the collective right now about being worthy, being good enough, right? Having power, being able to heal. And there's a lot. And the reason that they're coming up right now, I think, is a good thing, because they've been there a long time. Have you ever thought, right? Am I going to be able to do this? Am I the right person for this job? That's a disguise of, am I good enough? And if you have, and let's say you grew up in a family where you had parents who were really hard on you for your benefit, they pushed you. But whenever you did something, it wasn't good enough. So what you'll do is develop, right, to combat that limiting belief, you become a perfectionist. You become somebody who's very driven. But you can also see that drive without balance inside of it and coming from it's called an undercurrent of something where I'm not trying to prove myself all the time. It can start turning into problems in the body. It can start turning into problems in your emotionality, in connection with others. So these limiting beliefs don't just show up in your physical world. Some people can be healthy, right? But they've got limiting beliefs and they can't formulate and hold a relationship. They can't find, a lot of times in limiting beliefs. So I work with not only illness and disease, but people struggling with things like life purpose. So if you don't think you're good enough, would you believe that you're really important and you came here to do something amazing? Mm. And if you did have the idea, you probably wouldn't do it because you'd be afraid to fail.
Oh, that's so good. So let's say like someone does have perfectionist quality, because I think that is a collective issue. What does Theta Healing do to reprogram that? Is it different for everybody? What are some examples of how that gets reprogrammed in the body?
For me, when I'm working with a perfectionist, is the first thing is to start teaching them to really see where they're succeeding. Because the perfectionist is always looking at everything as not good enough. So it's hard to feel fulfilled and like successful, because if you get to that point, then there's always something else to do. So really with a lot of perfectionists, I really work with programs of seeking progress and recognizing progress, and really starting to shift them into looking into where are they succeeding, and even in seeing, do they have any beliefs around that they can be successful. And one of the key component, and I teach this a lot, whether it's in healing or in the classes. And this is because I learned it the hard way because I had belief systems, and notably so, I grew up with a very hard childhood. I was in and out of foster homes. I was abused by multiple people. I was abused in foster homes. I came back home. I've been on my own, out of my away from my mother since I was 16. So of course things were hard. So I had a lot of belief systems around things being hard all the time. So one major thing that Theta Healing did for me is teach me the value of grace and ease. A perfectionist really is always pushing. And that push will wear you out, even as much as see why so many people have how many chronic fatigue, adrenal fatigue syndromes, autoimmune. Autoimmune, if you look at the history of it, 2 generations ago, this wasn't a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And now everybody, and this is a belief, and I hear this as a belief, everybody has one. And people believe that. So, of course, right, you go to the doctor, and now you've got one too.
Yeah. Just kind of how everybody has ADHD these
Right.
days.
And, I'm going to give you a little hint. That's your undisciplined mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great excuse to not focus on what's important. It's a great excuse as to why you're not meditating. It's a great excuse as to why you can't complete anything. So one of the muscle tests for that one is ADD is a great excuse, and it will come up as a yes. And so you do in Theta Healing, you do muscle testing. So not only are you asking the person, because of course they would say no,
Mm-hmm.
but if you muscle test in the theta brainwave, the subconscious will say yes, right? It'll say, yeah, it's a great distraction. As soon as I say that, I don't have to focus.
No, that's a good one. So when you're doing ADHD, because that is a human conscious collective right now. It's just everybody I hear, it's like a cool thing. Like, I have ADHD. And sometimes I'll jokingly say it when I'm like all over the place too, but it's like when my brain isn't focused or I am not in a state of flow, I will have those moments of feeling that.
Yeah.
But how do people bring that back in without harsh medications to do that?
So understanding when you're talking about the mind, and this is the part of Theta Healing, is understanding we have a conscious mind. The conscious mind, even in yoga, is called the monkey mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to swing from one place to another. The issue with that is that everybody's in only their conscious mind, which is 10% of your brain. So if you are in that one, of course, you're going to buy into that my mind swings from one branch to another, because it is true that the conscious mind does that, because the conscious mind is meant to be problem solving. Even as you're listening to this, your conscious mind is like agreeing, disagreeing, putting it against files that you have in there. So when you go into the subconscious, which is in spirituality, the subconscious is the entryway to the presence, the I am. So when you're working with affirmations, really working with I am affirmations are the most powerful, because the I am is the true you. It's the essence of you. It is the part that's in your subconscious. And when you can get into that part, you're connected to something greater. And then you begin to direct your conscious mind. Mm-hmm. So Theta Healing is a form, and it's said to be a form of focused prayer and meditation that creates physical, psychological, spiritual, and emotional change. Because now you've got the subconscious, right, directing the show versus the conscious mind, which is like got squirrel syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
So I am very clear. One of the first principles of Theta Healing is the power of thoughts and words. Mm-hmm. So there are studies, and you can look at, if somebody is not depressed chemically, if they continue to say that again and again, their body will accommodate and shift chemicals, and pretty soon it will be so. And this, you can look up these studies.
Yes.
And
oh my gosh.
And it's 100%. The mind will create. So here's the thing. A lot of people believe in that. If that's true, Theta Healing says also, if that's true, then your mind can also decide something else, be empowered by clearing that limiting belief, and now reprogram it. And that's what it's really like in Theta Healing. You reprogram the mind. You reprogram the subconscious.
I love that. And I see like the first step is acknowledging when you do have those limiting thoughts or beliefs. And when I hear myself say something, I'll be like, cancel clear. One of my friends taught me that, the cancel clear. If you hear it, like then it's like clear that out of my subconscious, because I don't want that negative vibration or that word or something. I don't want that to be associated with me. I know we talked, I love meditating. Joe Dispenza's work I've done. I do a longer meditation practice in the mornings, but I heard you say this weekend at the class, it's like, it just takes 12 minutes to change your life every day.
Yeah, and that's from the mindfulness tradition. And mindfulness is the ability, and a lot of people work with mindfulness through the Buddhist tradition, but it's becoming even more mainstream. Mindfulness is the ability to be really present without any judgment. So it's just seeing things inside of that. So it's really being able to recognize what's going on.
So when people want to, start working with their subconscious theta brainwaves, what do you have them first do? I mean, talk about your getting up to your 12 minutes, how that was challenging for you at the beginning, and you'd go do your laundry and tell people that that's a normal thing and how you can get into that routine.
Yeah. So long before Theta Healing, very quickly when I went into yoga, and the yoga practice was really great for me because I was disassociated from my body. And I say this to people a lot. If you don't inhabit your body, something else will. Mm. So if you're vacant, you're making space for a disease to come in. If you're vacant, you're making space for negative energy of other people to come in. So yoga taught me, and was the first part, and I know that's why Creator took me there, was like, you need to get in your body. At that point of starting yoga, I had like no arches in my feet. I had pain in my back all the time. It was like this roaming pain. And it was because my body was like, where are you? Why are you not here? And then I started really recognizing that a lot of the reason I wasn't there is because my mind was everywhere else. I was anywhere but the present moment. And I said, really, when you look at it, the science is like 12 minutes could change your life. Well, that's a lot when you have like an unruly mind. And I was telling the story this weekend. At that point, and I laugh, I had CDs back then for Bluetooth and all this. So I found this meditation CD, and it started with 3 minutes, 7 minutes, and worked up to 11. And at the 3 minutes, I could endure. And I'd be like, man, this is a long 3 minutes. When I started going up to 7, it would ding halfway. And I would sit there and waiting for this ding. And then once I got where I'd sat with that, I said, well, I'm going to do it without, because, okay, here's the great thing. We have tons of guided meditations right out there, but there's also a need for complete and total silence and somebody else's voice not taking up your brain space too. So I was being, moved in that direction, and I would sit and I'd say, okay, I'd set my timer, I would sit down, and I would unconsciously get up and be in the laundry room. And I would be in the laundry like, Felicia, what are you doing in here? You were meditating. And I'd go sit back down. So if you develop a practice like this, here is what I tell my students. If you get up, you have to start over. So I put the thing back on, and pretty soon, I'd have picked up my phone now. Now I'm checking emails. It was so unconscious to reach for something. And what I know now is because the part of us that is what's called our ego, and Eckhart Tolle teaches this best, the ego is an enemy, and the ego and the present moment are enemies, because if you get in the present moment, it loses its power. So you don't run on those unconscious, all that other stuff. You're making a choice. And so it really started to discipline me and really see what was going on in my mind. And that's where meditation took me at that point, to understanding the energy of my body. And that's where I went into first 15 years of study with Reiki and understanding chakras. A wonderful book even to have on yourself, and it was one of the first ones that I started to look at, was Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. Mm-hmm. She was the pioneer of looking at illness and disease, and why did certain things and why did certain thoughts we think end up in certain areas of the body. And even in her book, she'll have affirmation statements. So that was where I started at the time, but I still was experiencing a lot of the unconscious the good thing is I was doing Reiki pretty regularly, so I was managing it. But man, if I took a day off, I could feel that under the surface. So I think that a lot of times that people are spending a lot of time managing an illness versus healing from the illness.
Yeah. And such a good point, because, everything that we do here at the health spa, we have a little bit of everything here. And also, like, I never want someone to just be managing their symptoms. Like, I don't want you to have to come here every single day to make yourself feel better. I want you to get to that point where you don't have to rely on infusions or lymphatic system or red light or foot detox. Like, I want you to be in a state of health. And with that, what the biggest gap, what I found, especially in just our society, is that the mind work, the emotional, spiritual work. Why do I have this challenge to begin with? And how can I raise above that and start reprogramming my mind? And I think that's where people get stuck. And that's where I see Theta Healing being such a beautiful tool to help them.
And that's really so important. Is even, this class this weekend is, I realized that a lot of people have the desire to be better, the desire to heal. So they're aware, which is the first step of anything. You have to be aware. But then if you don't know how to do anything about it, this would be where your subconscious would protect you. Even for myself, when I was very sick, I had no awareness that it was coming. I knew where I'd come from in my life, and I was manifesting spasms in my back so much that it would shut me down, which is your past, right? The back body is related to the past. I didn't have teaching, consciousness. You're talking about 0 to 7. I didn't have any primary guidance around that. We didn't grow up with spirituality. We didn't grow up going to church. My mom had this motto that, right, things just happen and nobody has it under control. And I remember even being a kid, like, we're sitting in the dark because you didn't pay the bill. Like, this didn't just happen, right? And my mom had belief systems that she didn't matter, that what she did didn't make a difference. And those were in me. So it didn't matter what I did. It was just going to be this way. I had all these limiting beliefs that were coming up. And that's where it took first for an awareness of it. Then it said, right, and if I'd have stopped there, I wouldn't probably have changed very much. When the awareness came, that's when you start looking and asking, now what? Now I know what? And then that's where you engage the inner part of you that would start to bring you synchronicity. Start paying attention when you know. And then you're like, well, that's funny. I just had a conversation and I just listened to this podcast and she mentioned this book and I might go get that book. For me, it was like, all of a sudden, I'm like, everybody's like, have you tried yoga for your back? And I go by a billboard, yoga. And I was like, maybe I should try some yoga. But it was up to me to decide to take that step. So you guys, when you are getting like that, if you don't have the word for it, whether you call it intuition or a nudge or an instinct, follow it. What will it hurt to buy the book?
Yeah.
Even if you read one chapter, what you're doing is starting to open your mind to different possibilities.
Oh, I love that. Our friends, we always call it like magic synchronicities. And we love to tell each other, like, if we have a synchronicity, we're like, oh, this is what happened, because to me, nothing is a coincidence. And the people we meet, the circumstances that we're in, it's not a coincidence. It's meant here for something in our life, whether it be a small lesson or a huge, life lesson. Everything is intentional.
Yes. Whether you realize it or not, that is true. And the beautiful thing, and what I've learned about synchronicity, and if you have synchronicity happening, that means you're on the right path. When you're on the wrong path, nothing aligns. Okay? If you're on a path right now and nothing's working out, you need to stop and review the direction you're going. Because if you're on the right path and you believe that, right, you'll start to see it. Even synchronicity is more powerful than you. It'll show up whether you believe it or not. I don't know how many times people things like angel numbers, a penny on the ground, a sign, right? A t-shirt. I remember one time I was really struggling and I had this big event I was going to do. And at the last minute, the whole thing falls apart. I was supposed to travel. And so I was just distraught. I was like, what did I do wrong? I put so much into that. And I was sitting at the beach and out of nowhere, this man with a giant tattoo walks over and starts talking to me, which I don't really attract people just randomly coming up. And I wasn't in a like positive vibe. And it said right on his chest, "Too blessed to be stressed." And I realized that happened for me, not against me. That if I'd have went, it would have probably, and I don't need to know what would happen, but in that moment, because I was consciously saying why, when that walked up, it brought this awareness in me of like, okay, too blessed to be stressed. I can sit here and be stressed about this, or I'm at the beach. And I'm enjoying a weekend off at the beach instead of being in another state, working really hard. And maybe it wasn't going to turn into what I wanted anyway.
Sure. Oh my gosh. That reminds me of a story where the guy, his house is flooding and he's like on top of his roof and he's like praying to God to come save him. And two guys with boats come like, "Hey, come on." And he's like, "No, God's saving me." And then, like these people keep coming to save him. And then he ends up dying. And he's like, "Why didn't you save me?" He's like, God's like, "Duh.
I sent you a boat, a plane. I sent you like a guy who would carry you and you decided to just sit there."
Because
that's one of my favorite stories as well.
A lot of times, we see the penny on the ground or we see the 1111 come up. Like we see all these synchronicities, but we're like, nah, that wasn't it.
Even as much as think of programs and there's this thing of like, I got this. I can do it all by myself. All of that. As much as those serve you at times, they also limit you because really to reach the level of extraordinary that you're meant to co-create. So there are times when people are saying, "Yeah, I'm open to help." And then literally you walk right up to them and they're carrying a bunch of stuff and you say, "Can I grab that bag for you?" And they're like, "No, I got it." And I'm like, that right there is showing that you won't accept even somebody to open the door for you at this point. So how are you going to receive help from divine? If God opens that door for you, you're going to be like, "I didn't open that." So you're not going to go through it. Because really in the understanding, and I don't say I got this, I say we got this. Yeah. We got this.
You gave a really good quote this weekend. It was like, "I'm not alone." What do you know what I'm talking about? It was like, I might be alone, but
I'm never on my own.
I'm never on my own.
I might be alone, but I'm never on my own.
I love that.
Because really at all times, and I also, Theta Healing, connecting, and I realize that we have angels all around us. And even right now, just saying that, your angels will come in. You have these guardian angels that are with you. Actually, people can feel alone and on their own by themselves in the middle of a group of people. But really understanding that you didn't come down here to do this all by yourself. And actually, it's an illusion that you are.
That brings me to a point, because right now it's just like, well, what religion is this? And there's a lot of like Catholicism in this area and like Reiki, just.
Well, because it's from Japan.
Yeah, I think people just, they just judge things and they listen to someone else outside of them saying, "Oh, this is bad, but my scripture's good." And, so like the judgments and our like little brains. And so and even with reading, some of my staff was like, "Well, I don't connect with the God conscious. Like I am having a hard time with that," because there are people that are very much into religion around here. And then there are the people that are like, religion actually hurt me. So I have some trauma from the religion, not from the actual God or that, but from the people that create this. Mm-hmm. So what is Theta Healing in terms of like a creator energy? What does that belief system look like?
That's why in Theta Healing call it creator, because anything that is in the material world is created. So did we make the earth? Did we make the stars? Did we make all of that? No, something greater created it all. When you start talking of God and Buddha and all these other things, you're getting into a lot of dogma. So it's really in this system, and I can tell you 100% when I came into Theta Healing. So like I said, I grew up with no spirituality, no religion. We didn't go to church unless, like I got dragged along with somebody from school every now and again. And so when I came into Theta Healing, I had been on a path of yoga, and I also studied Buddhism and went along that path, and still am a Buddhist fundamentalist. I understand. And for me, Buddhism is not a religion. It's a philosophy of life. Basically, it says you have suffering and what your job is to figure out how to not suffer anymore. And it gives you basically guidelines for living, how to live better, how to be more focused, all of that. It made perfect sense to me. So at that point, and Reiki is not connecting to God, so to speak. Reiki connects to universal energy. It's called ki. So ki is what is in a tree that keeps it alive. It's what's in you. So even that didn't push toward any sort of creator or God. It was like, okay, I'd gotten there. And one of the things with Theta Healing is that to practice it, there has to be a connection to the creator, because that's where that energy that is the all pervasive is doing work through you. So when I went into Theta Healing, I had to shift limiting beliefs, and it opened up a whole new world within me. I started to be able to feel more comfortable. I felt, after Theta Healing, my first class as a practitioner, the only word that really helped to describe it was I felt a oneness. I felt connected differently than I ever had before. And I started to think about, like, how did this world come to be? It started to open up bigger questions, and people are like, how do you talking about a creator? I thought you're a Buddhist. And I said, so did I. And now I'm like opening up. Even my whole energy and vibration changed because it suddenly connected me. And it's like if I was getting really close to it prior to that. And every once in a while I'd get into that stream of consciousness, but I didn't know what it was. And then when I went into Theta, those are the first beliefs that had to be shifted. And that's where I realized that I wasn't on my own. The reason I felt that way is because I felt like I was on my own, which admittedly, if you look at how I grew up, and another level in Theta Healing is genetics. My mom was an only child. She was on her own a lot, right? So there was a lot of programs of like being on your own and nobody looking out for you. So why would I believe there was some creative force that was actually like looking out after me when I'm sitting here being abused and in foster homes?
Yeah.
So that was really such a game changer for me with Theta Healing.
Oh, I love that. When I was in yoga teacher training, one of the readings was like, I just see like all of the religion in the outer circle, and then like all having their energy into the creator, right? Because again, it's like the outside religions, that's like a small mind, right? It's like the ego, like what we want to believe in, but we say this is the only thing and nothing else exists. And there has to be some commonality in that. And to me, that's like the creator energy. I know that people in, again, the Catholic Christian faith, Reiki, like you could be guiding in dark angels and fallen angels. And I know we talked about that this weekend. And I think,
unfortunately, there's a little truth to it. If you're not connected to the pure sources, just like in our world, here in our world, we have people who are really good and we have some people who aren't really good. And that's true in the level of spirit as well. So even when you're working with things like Reiki, with things like that, it's really important that you are very clear and intentional about what you will allow to move through you.
I love that.
I really teach my students a lot of discernment. Don't say and don't give permission in your thoughts and words that anything can come through you. Because what you do is say anything can come through me. And most of the time when you would say that you think you're evolving, you've probably let everybody come into you in life itself. And that's the reason why you're going to Reiki, is that you want to stop that.
Yeah.
At any level, it's important to have some energetic boundaries. For Reiki, I said people will, and I say this with Reiki, like people will come to me and they'll say I had a Reiki experience and they're telling me about basically somebody who's a medium, and I'm like, that's not what Reiki is. Reiki, just so you know, is just basically an energy, and you put it over the chakras and it brings harmony. That's the scope of Reiki. All the other is the extra added onto it. That's even why Theta Healing is a trademark system, that when you teach it, you follow certain guidelines, because Viana is very much about holding integrity. And with Theta Healing, when you learn how to connect to what's called the seventh plane, which is the creator's energy, then you can do practice like Reiki, you can do all these other things because you're protected in unconditional love. Anything that would not be in alignment with unconditional love would not be allowed to channel through you. It would not happen. So it keeps you protected like nothing else will.
I love that. And I think I just think about people that maybe are in the religious realm and they will be okay with someone being a prophet and or a priest or someone being able to channel God through them. Well, they're channeling creator energy. Yeah. And just because someone isn't doing that in they're saying it's a specific religious realm and they're doing something that maybe they say Reiki or Theta Healing, you're at the end of the day, the people that are doing it in the purest intentions are coming from the unconditional love.
Yes.
So I really wanted to make that a point as we go through this, because there are people that are just so opposed to that. But what they don't get is we have to use our intuition. We have to use our discernment, just like any healing modality. If you come to the spa and IV doesn't seem to resonate with your body, then you say no to it. Yeah. You don't do anything against your will. Yeah. Same with energy work. You have to make sure that you're finding the right practitioners that resonate with you and saying, no, thank you, not mine, cancel clear, if it doesn't resonate. So I think that's just really good for everybody to know.
Yeah. And so when you talk about a session with Theta Healing, and I see this a lot, is that people go and get a session of energy work, and then they allow the practitioner to tell them about themselves, right? And the person has been passive, and right, they're telling them all these different ideas, and you have this and this, and that only is going to affect for so long, because the subconscious is designed to keep you safe. And really, another one of the principles of Theta Healing is that you have free will and free agency. That's why if you don't buy into God because of religion, creator is a different thing. You could neutralize that and think of it as, if all you thought of is that creator is unconditional love and that you were open to unconditional love, that's your free agency to call it that. When you're working with Theta Healing, and this is big, and I teach our practitioners, we're not there to tell them what the thing is. What we're there to do is ask them questions that helps them to get to that conclusion themselves. We can point them in the right direction through the creator, but then everything that is spoken. So when you have a session with me, I'll put you on the table like with Reiki, but we talk throughout it. We talk before. Mm-hmm. We set a specific intention as to where you're wanting to see change. What I'm doing in that, because I'll take to the theta, is that I basically have a way through the subconscious, and you learn this as a practitioner. It's called the digging process, where you go, if I ask the right question, the subconscious will give me the answer. Mm-hmm. So you're putting them in that state. Theta Healing, Viana studied Reiki, she studied hypnosis, she studied naturopath. She studied all these broad range, so brought it all into Theta Healing. And then the job is to ask the right question so the person can figure that out for themselves. So you don't go, this is what it is. You say, if there was something that had you believing that you weren't good enough, and let's say it come up at your level of core, you could say, when you were growing up, did you feel like what you did was good enough? Instead of saying, when you grew up, you weren't good enough. Yeah. See the difference? Mm-hmm. Because it's a part of us, as soon as somebody is trying to tell us, it will go. It'll either what will happen is that you'll just say, okay, I'll buy into that, mm-hmm. or you'll fight against it.
Right.
So with Theta Healing, Theta Healing, and when you practice it, it has specific guidelines of how to work through that process. So it's not about me telling you everything that is about you. You have to discover it. That's why all healing, if you're really doing healing, the healer's job is to empower the practitioner to heal thyself.
I love that.
In the formula of Theta Healing, it is the creator plus the client plus somebody who observes what's going on, and that's the result. And that's where Theta Healing is a quantum science, because that's a law in physics, that nothing happens without an observer.
Okay. Wow. So much. I just had a session with you this morning, and I mean, just as everything that you were saying, like the muscle testing, like I love the muscle testing aspect, because that, brings in our subconscious. And even if we're saying, no, I don't believe that, and then you do a muscle testing, it's like, yeah, you do. Like here it is. And your body sees it. Like, you do different ways of muscle testing, but your body doesn't lie to you. You know, the body keeps a score. Great book. I mean, that it's something that is there. So if you, like you said, you're asking the right questions. And even when I came in today, you're just kind of like, well, tell me about you. And then all of a sudden, organically, it's like, I feel like I'm putting out fires and, it's busy. And then we got into like, okay, your body, Crohn's, like the yang energy, like you don't have to do that, and kind of teasing away that layer from my body and balancing it. And for me to know that yang isn't a bad thing, it can be the yang energy and yin balance. Like that, it was just beautiful. I had such a beautiful session, and it feels so healing. I want everybody to experience this healing. And I'm so glad that all of our staff here is now trained in Theta Healing, because it puts a different vibration into the universe. I always say this at the clinic. We know water is a carrier of powerful healing and emotions and all of that. So we're always like, I want to hire people that are in good spirits and happy and healers, because that's getting integrated into every service that they receive here. And now they all have the Theta Healing to get like that one extra step.
Yeah, and that's really a lot of why I believe that we were connected. Is this was an opportunity to come and not just shift one person, it was to shift a unit of people. Because really, in even understanding and why, even as a practitioner, to get to medical intuitive, is that you go through your own beliefs, and the person that is your healer, if they are limited in their beliefs, they will limit the people that they're working with. So when you have a lot of things, you have a lot of people coming here with like cancer and some really serious things. If the person helping them doesn't believe in the power of positive thinking, they'd be saying that, but it would hold no weight to that person. So one other thing, just to make sure, is that you've said this several times, is this pull and cancel part. This is the part where Theta Healing takes that one step further. Okay? Because if we just pull something and cancel that, but we don't replace it with something, what will happen is that from somewhere else will come in, and it's from the inside to take its place. That's where you often see imbalances roam around a body. Start even one area, you work with that, it goes somewhere else. Oh, I used to have a pain in my this, now it's over here. It's because it's roaming energy, and it's the same with beliefs. So Theta Healing is very specific. You want to identify what it is, what's the limiting belief, pull that one, cancel it out on all levels, 4 levels of belief: core, genetic, resolving past issues, and getting to the soul level, and replace it with the positive. Even a replacement can be, right, I am good enough. And if it's coming up as a no, the replacement can be shifting it to a yes. Because that's where muscle testing keeps it simple. It's yes or no. There is no maybe. There is no possibly. There is no I don't know. It says it's either a clear yes or a clear no. And this is where sometimes even with people in muscle testing, I first got to give them the download that they can even answer yes and no. And it's safe to, because so many people sit in the middle of a maybe. So here's the thing. Ready? Maybe is still no. Because if it's not, when it's a yes, in a yes in muscle testing, your body will move towards it.
Yeah.
Towards it. No, it'll go away from it. Maybe you're just sitting in the middle, hanging out between the two. And that's the place where, and even in Theta Healing, you don't get to say, I don't know. Here's what I say to you. If you did know, right?
Yeah.
Like right now, if I asked you, what color is your aura? You say, I don't know. And I say, if you did know, what would it be? I just saw purple in my mind. Whatever color comes to your mind.
Purple's what actually came to my mind.
That's exactly right there.
So awesome. Yeah.
The point is in that, play with that, because what does it matter? It's not going to end the world.
Right.
If you say purple, green, or yellow. Sometimes they won't give me an answer. I say, what's your favorite color? Like that. Okay, that works.
Yeah.
Because you got to start trusting.
Trust.
That's
what it is, right?
Trust.
It's trust.
Yeah. And how many people have like limiting beliefs around trust?
100%. Yeah. Wow. That's big. And you know what you also taught this weekend too is like, if you're not sure what to replace that cancel clear with, unconditional love. Yeah. And that, to me, that's easy. You don't have to like if you're, on a spot to do investigational work on why that came up, you're in the middle of work or something, you can just cancel clear it and just send yourself unconditional love.
Yeah. That I don't want to hold that thought. So let that spot, like if you're holding your parking spot and you're holding it with unconditional love, because if you hold it in unconditional love, what will happen is spontaneously, right? Another one would, something positive could come in its place. Unconditional love. And then the next thought may be, go a little easier on yourself today, Felicia, right? take a minute to breathe. Because as soon as you put unconditional love, what you've done is started a process of co-creation. Because unconditional love is the love of the universe that is unlimited. The love of the universe that is there for everyone. That's why even when you're talking about, and the Dalai Lama says it best, that his religion is loving kindness. It says, he talks about religion. This is the most beautiful understanding of like all these different ideas about God. And he said, it's all okay. Imagine you're in a flower shop and every one of them is their own unique flower. And because there's so many flowers, the others, by contrast, those flowers go together and they make this beautiful bouquet. If there was just one flower, would we really honor how beautiful it was? Because sometimes it's because of those other contrasts that we see. So for me, studying, and I've studied Course in Miracles, which is Christian, right? It was channeled through Jesus, channeled through this woman, if you look into it. So I've studied that. I believe in that. It's 100%. I study Buddhism. I understand that. I study yoga. What I look for is a place where there's love.
Yes.
And if there's anything other than love, that's not my place. That's not my place. It's not my place to judge them, but it's not my place to be. So it's either unconditional love for me or it's not the place for me. And so if inside of that, if that's my belief and I'm holding judgment inside of myself, would I be inside of myself? No, I would be. And a lot of people live, and you guys, the catchword is whether you're grounded,
yes,
which basically means you live outside of yourself. So your body's going around doing its stuff and you're like down the street. And then you wonder why your body is tired and run down. The only language your body has is to say, hey, I'm going to make you hurt. And then you'll turn your attention toward me.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah.
It's big.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this has been fantastic. I knew it would
Time
be.
just goes, right?
It does. Tell me, if people want to work with you, you're from Florida, they can go visit you in the Destin area.
Yeah, you can come to the beach.
It's beautiful. Or, I know that you're offering virtual.
Yes.
So, and then what if they want to take it one step further? What if they want to get, you did a 3-day activation for us. What if they want to do that? How can they do that?
I'm also certified to teach Theta Healing at virtual platform as well. And I am one that, by the grace of the Creator, I have a very flexible life. So I work with a lot of people one-on-one with things like this. We could do work virtually if it was working towards you doing Theta Healing. I really think that it's really important, because you go into those classes, it's good to have some work going up to the class to get you prepared for what's going to happen. And the class is 3 days because by the end, you've shifted a lot of belief. Throughout the weekend, you look at fear, resentment, rejections, regrets. You look at your beliefs around your connection and your importance. So the DNA activation is where you are activating the new beliefs. So Theta Healing has, with it, it's like the basic class, and there's many that go from that. If you want to learn more about Theta Healing itself, go to thetahealing.com to read more about Viana and the different courses. She has tons of blogs, understanding from any topics as manifestation, soulmates, disease and disorder. There's tons of information there. You can also, I'm going to be releasing a book in the next month.
Yes.
And it's a culmination of all of from where I left off with Uncommon Faith, because that left it with Reiki and Buddhism and where I was at that point. Now, 10 years, this February is 10 years since I released that book, and it's called The Virtues of Divinity, Awaken Your Super Soul Powers. Because in Theta Healing, and ultimately in your healing, it's to get to lesson learned, virtue obtained. And the virtues are things such as faith, compassion, courage, resilience, truth, trust, purpose. So in the book, I talk about 4 principles. The 4 principles are that you must awaken, you must do self-examination, because you got to know what you want to change. Then you do transformation, and then you do what's called embodiment. So now you've awakened to the fact that you want to be more courageous. You've got to look at what that looks like to you. Start doing things more courageous. And then pretty soon, you don't have to try to be courageous. You just are. You're embodying it. So in the book, the 4 principles, and then creator had me put 44 different virtues. So that'll be released as a book with basically the ABCs of virtues, how to apply that. And it'll have basically like a inspirational card deck that you could play with and do stuff too. And that's really from all the things I've learned inside of this last 10 or 15 years with Theta Healing.
I love it. And I love your first book, how you ask questions throughout it. Yeah. So I love reading books that are work along journaling so that I can reflect. And so that, I'm listening to your story and I'm tying it into like the collective of like, what am I experiencing with that? So you asked really beautiful questions. And I can't wait to read this book. And like you said, you have the cards that can go with it and just help us get to that next level. So I'm so grateful that you said yes to this opportunity.
Yeah, of course.
And I look forward to it.
It only takes one yes to change your life, guys. So, when if you're wanting something and somebody offers, say yes. That's a virtue of faith. You don't have to know where it's going to take you, but say yes, and it could take you places you never thought possible.
I love that. And hopefully that's taking Felicia back to Piasta, Iowa later in this year to do some more basic training and advance for the community.
Yes,
so
definitely.
Awesome. Well,
yes.
Safe travels, and we'll see each other soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for watching.